What revenge story are you finally ready to confess? Story 1. My mother-in-law is truly awful. She constantly makes remarks about me not deserving my fiancé. We are a sort of modern couple, with him bringing in 70% of the money and doing about 30% of the household chores, and me vice versa. It's not an exact math, of course, but we are content with the workload and bill division. My mill thinks that I should do all the chores and calls my job a small part-time gig that I should be happy to do to help out without neglecting my duties. My fiancé disagrees, but going low contact is difficult when his father's involved, and his sister-in-law, his brother's wife, and I have gotten close. So my fiancé, his brother, his SIL, and I schemed to have me break up with him in front of his mom and just leave a wake of disastrous consequence to show her. When she next made a remark at New Year's about it being time for him to find a traditional wife, I said she was right and broke it off. She was shocked immediately and tried to walk it back. My fiancé had a meltdown, begging me to stay while my brother-in-law and his wife instigated by asking my uomil if she was prejudiced. They didn't tell me about this part, but it was funny because she doesn't seem to be prejudiced in any real way. She started to panic as I stormed out, and my fiancé moved back home and has been bugging her to do all the things I do on the daily. Cooking, helping him with his New York Times puzzles, steaming his clothes, and claiming she owes him for making me leave. So this woman has been calling me nonstop, begging to talk, and after just 8 days she showed up at my work to fully apologize, complete with a confession that blew me away. She legit admitted to thinking that I loved him enough to let her say whatever without consequence, and assumed that bugging me would get me to do more for her son so he could have more time for her and time to relax. He currently works long hours, as owning a home is a goal for us. And though I also work doubles, she thinks that customer service isn't as hard as IT, even though working with the public is super exhausting. She cried and begged me to take him back and said he was lazy. When I reluctantly agreed, she promised to leave me alone, and the next day sent me a gift basket with C's candy in it. My fiancé admitted he started to be extra needy to her on purpose after the second day because he missed me and wanted to drive her crazy enough to get her to apologize quick. Story 2. A guy left me stranded on a first date. I, 19F, went on a date with a guy, M19, for the first time. It was a beautiful day where we lived, so he took me to this nature park and we went on a walk. We talked about our lives, and I honestly thought it was going really well. After the walk, he said he needed to use the bathroom. I did too, so he drove to the nearest store where we could go, which was a Best Buy. I went to the bathroom, and he did too. When I came out, I waited. I waited, and waited for him to come out. Finally, I got worried and I texted him. The message did not go through, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt and assumed his phone had died. I then got tired of waiting and went to check to see if his car was still in the parking lot. Sure enough, it wasn't. I went back inside and asked the person at the front if they saw a man, gave his description, leave the store. They said they saw him run out of the store in a hurry a bit ago, so he left me, stranded, at a random Best Buy 20 minutes from my house. I took an Uber home, and I was upset, so I decided to find a family member of his on social media and tell them what he did. I eventually found who I think was his sister and told her the whole story. She ensured I would get my things back, as some were still in his car, and even offered to reimburse me for the Uber. Some may think I'm extreme, but when one goes low, I go lower. I got my things back, and they were clearly thrown into my yard out of his window. Someone was definitely upset that their family now knows what kind of person they really are. Story 3. So let's get this out of the way. I am 34F, my mom was 55F, and my now ex-stepdad is 65M. They co-owned the home as joint tenants, and everything they had together was 50-50 at this point in time. Let's call my ex-stepfather L. So my mom and L had been married for 17 years. There had always been questionable behavior, but it was none of my business as I moved out at 18. Well, at 27, I decided I wanted to go to college to better myself. My mom and L both agreed and offered me and my small family the basement apartment of their home. 1.5 years into my program, my mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. A week before she was due to have surgery to remove the tumors, one of the big ones ruptured. One thing led to another, and my mom's cancer spread. She was re-diagnosed with a different cancer, one that was rare and in the connective tissue. She was given a 2-year estimate without treatments. Now, this is where L started becoming abusive. He was at this appointment with my mom and had a full-blown tantrum. Note, I have my mom's medical notes and a doctor's note detailing all of this. This is important later, and said that his wife won't be doing anything. He stormed out of the room, and my mom then told the doctor, also noted in the medical record, that she feared for her life because she knew if she didn't do the treatments, she would die, but also knew L wouldn't let her. L became abusive. He started becoming verbally, mentally, and physically abusive. He drained their joint bank account so my mom couldn't even buy herself bread. He cut the brake lines on her car and more, doing everything in his power to stop her from getting treatment. Let's say she had treatments twice a week, every week. She would maybe get to half of them if my spouse or I drove her. My mom ended up moving into my unit in the basement, and I started defending her against him. I told him, if you don't stop, I will do everything in my power to ensure you are held responsible for her death. He laughed at me and told me, you're a woman, what can you do to me? His abuse then extended toward me at pretty much any chance he got. Well, I hired my mom a lawyer and changed my program into criminal law as best I could, so I could learn everything about how the system works. I then handed in evidence, and we started to build a case. It took 8 months of collecting evidence through security cameras I set up in the home. L knew about these cameras. I hid nothing, and he was aware he was on camera in certain areas of the home. During this time, I had already been pre-approved by the bank to purchase his 50% of the house. All he had to do was sign one piece of paper and agree, and within 30 days he could have gotten $250,000. He refused because I wasn't going to get his house when he was going to put my whole family on the street. And yes, that was all caught on camera. L was handed a summons by my lawyer's office to attend court with us. He refused. He said he knew more than the lawyers and was not going to show. Because of this, we ended up winning in court, and sole possession of the home was given to my mother. All his assets were locked and put under my mom's supervision to prevent him from liquidating anything. He had a restraining order placed on him from the house and my mom, and he wasn't allowed to leave Canada. He was evicted by the police that night, the locks were changed, etc. With him out of the home, we got my mom onto ODSP, and she was finally able to safely start treatments because she now had access to transportation through ODSP and cancer support organizations. My lawyer also broke the joint tenancy on the home and turned it into tenants in common. This is also super important. And while my mom was still lucid, she said everything so that if, when she passed, the house and everything she owned would go to me. For those who don't know, in Canada, you have 2 options when buying a house. Joint tenants for married couples wanting to split a home 50-50. If one dies, the other automatically gets the home. Tenants in common is when multiple parties own equity separately, and upon death, it goes according to the will. You can look it up for more detail. In the next 2 years, before my mom eventually lost her fight with cancer, we kept going to court with L. He kept refusing to sign divorce papers or accept offers, etc. I became my mom's caregiver and was the one who cared for her in every aspect. Closer to the end, L told not only my lawyer, but also the judge in a settlement meeting that he refuses to sign or deal with anything else. He would also not attend any more meetings because he would wait for my mom to die and take everything. He was told in court by the judge and 2 lawyers that it would not happen. He laughed, and that was the last anyone heard from L. My mom passed away this year, not due to the cancer itself, but due to a complication from it. A tumor ruptured and caused an upper gastrointestinal bleed. She died in my arms. There was nothing I could do. I was diagnosed with PTSD from the traumatic event. This is also important. But I still managed to handle everything. L changed all his contacts and didn't update the courts on his whereabouts. After she passed, my mom's lawyer took her will, and we went through probate court. Since my mom had been granted sole possession, and as per her will and video evidence gathered by the lawyers and judges before she passed, everything was to be transferred to me. I had to sign some paperwork with the judges just agreeing to everything that had been set up, but it was all done legally and properly. I also submitted all my mom's medical notes, including the note from the original doctor that spoke about L's outburst and my mom's fears. Unfortunately, both my lawyer and the judge said they couldn't hold him responsible for her death, but they did agree that his actions led to it. I am still in court trying to have him criminally held responsible. I know it's a long shot, but I'm trying. My lawyer says it's a 60-40 chance, and she's doing what she can based on the evidence and confessions we have. There's a chance, even if slim. The home and everything she owned got transferred to me. So I am now the registered owner of the house with sole physical possession. I've also been granted her life insurance, which went entirely to paying off her debts, including their joint line of credit, credit cards, and pretty much everything he thought he would get by waiting for her to die. It was all given to me and approved by the judge. I have agreed with the courts, because I'm not a bad person, that I will honor the 50% buyout that was originally proposed when we started this battle. However, any debt he owes me, because he still owns 50% equity only, will be deducted from the buyout balance. We also won't be reappraising the house due to the renovations I will be paying for. He now owes me over $50,000 in debt and rising, based on renovations I do, paying off the joint mortgage and the joint line of credit. My lawyer also wants to go for 50% of all legal fees and compensation for anything I lose due to my PTSD, but they need to find him first. Since no one can contact L, and my province in Canada has a 2-year statutory limit for court claims, the one he opened to get the house back has been thrown out of the system as abandoned claim and title. I showed up in court. He didn't. After some internet digging, my friend found that L had taken off to Mexico and is no longer in Canada. That violates the court order placed on him when he was evicted. He was not to leave Canada until everything was settled. That's a whole separate issue my lawyer's handling, and it doesn't involve me directly. But until he returns, the courts aren't focused on it. If he doesn't return, and let's say passes away in Mexico, my lawyer and the judge advised me that we'll go after his estate through court for the 50% equity to be transferred to me as collateral for the debt owed. Either way, I own the house. I have sole possession, and in every legal sense, it belongs to me. If he does come back, he will face consequences for leaving Canada, and if he tries to reopen a claim, he can't. Since the original one was marked abandoned, my lawyer says he can't file another. He'll be stuck with either A, taking the offer, or B, refusing, in which case I'll go after his estate and equity in court. Either way, in every possible scenario, he will not be getting possession of the home again. So yeah, at this point, I'm still in court to have him held accountable. The courts and lawyers are all on my side. They were the ones who granted me the house and everything. I legally took everything from him because his actions delayed my mom's treatments and ultimately led to her death. Story 4. I once had a new client not pay me. I had opened my business 3 months prior, and I was struggling. I needed the money and agreed to take payment on Friday, as they needed to add me into the system. I had a small B&B, and he had a contract in the area. Dinner, bed, and breakfast for a group of people for 6 days. And then they left in the middle of the night. I tried getting the money from him for 6 months. This was just after my dad passed, and I had to take care of my mom. It was also 2 months before my wedding. The result was that I couldn't pay a few bills and had to borrow money. It took me years to pay it off because we were struggling. For the following 8 years, I would call him on a private number in the middle of the night. I set alarms and called to wake him up, or when I'd wake up to use the bathroom, I'd call him until he disconnected his number. I registered his number and email on every spam, scam, and adult website I could find. I wrote bad reviews using his full name and business all over the internet until I heard it had closed down. I commented that he was a thief on every Facebook image he uploaded until he made his profile private. When that happened, I messaged his friends to let them know he had stolen from me. I messaged every one of them. His business was in another city, and I Googled the area and called all his neighbors to tell them he was selling illegal substances out of his shop. I'm pretty sure I caused him more damage than the money he still owes me. Now, my business is established, and I make good money, but I will never forget the person who kicked me when I was at my lowest point. Story 5. I was the weird goth girl in high school. I own it. It doesn't bother me at all. Honestly, I see why I was a target for this. So, sophomore year of high school, I got a text from a guy. How he got my number is still a mystery to me, but it gives me the ick, who was a football player and therefore pretty popular by default. He was very much sliding into my DMs, as we would call it now, but this was 2007, so we still flirted via text. He started off by making me guess who he was, which was super weird and an instant red flag. After a lot of back and forth, with him being flirty, he finally told me. I was like, what the heck? Because I hadn't said 2 words to this guy since the 7th grade. Total cold call. But then he started with the usual, oh, I think you're really cute, etc. Then, after a polite but not very assertive decline, the messages started to get more graphic. Thankfully, I was spared any explicit photos. He dropped the idea that we should meet up and kept trying to entice me to come over. Now, I was your typical goth kid who was very anti-conformist, admittedly to a cringy degree, which included wanting nothing to do with jocks. I got super upset that he was hitting on me at all, especially since he was being inappropriate about it. So my temper got the best of me, and basically I told him off and said things like, "You're gross. Why would I want anything to do with you?" I just started roasting him for being an unoriginal, pathetic jock who was going to peak in high school. He did not take this well. Not because he actually liked me and was hurt, but because apparently this was all meant to be a joke where the text would have been spread around the school to embarrass me. He allegedly had multiple friends over who were in on it at the time. They were also trying to lure me to his house to collectively laugh at me. As some have pointed out, there may have been even more disturbing intentions, and I could have ended up in a worse situation had I gone. If you'd known them, you'd agree. These guys were definitely the type. Basically, his plan backfired in the worst way. To make matters worse for him, his friends started laughing at him and then leaked the text, saying he was clearly a loser because he just got rejected by the school weirdo. This was amplified by my friends, who were furious about what he was trying to do to me. They spread the story to anyone who would listen. As you can see, in the end, the revenge happened unintentionally on my end, and then continued thanks to his own friends and mine. Seriously, I don't know how you recover from getting rejected by high school me. Story 6. My sister is nearly 40, an alcoholic and drug user, but somehow still the life of the party. She still lives at home, and my mom pays for everything. When my son was born, my mom worked in the children's clothing section at a department store. For my birthday, I got nothing because I was too old, yet my sister would have parties, presents, and anything she wanted. I later found out she had been telling my mom that I only wanted her money, and this had been going on for over 10 years. I own a house. I don't want anything from her. My brother also lives at home and got some things, but nothing like my sister. We went on a holiday and I had to pay for myself while my mom paid for my sister. My sister stole my mom's jewelry, computer, GPS, and more to fund her addiction. She even overdosed, yet she's still treated like the golden child. About 4 years ago, we went no contact after my son asked, "Why do we bother?" It got me thinking, and yeah, life is so much better without them. I still have friends in that town, and my sister can't keep a job. I know she rarely pays rent, so we came up with a plan. At 40, she had never been arrested because my mom always paid off her debts. So a friend waited until payday, saw her meet with her dealer, and witnessed her buying a large amount of drugs. It just so happened that the police were in the area and stopped her. She had 6 grams on her. She was arrested and charged with possession. My mom refused to bail her out until the next day. Now, at age 40, she has a curfew. If she doesn't pay rent, she has to move out. If she throws a tantrum, she has to move out. Finally, she got what she deserved. And no, I'm still not speaking to them, but I feel warm and satisfied inside. Story 7. 2 years ago, my friends and I rented a condo in a popular tourist town for a long weekend. We paid a lot, but the location was perfect for what we needed. When we got there, the building and condo were both underwhelming, but we didn't care. It was just a place to sleep. When I say underwhelming, I mean the building was unsafe. Rotting stairwells, loose railings, you name it. Not long after settling in, we realized the place was going to be a problem. The neighbor upstairs, Karen, demanded we move a vehicle from the unloading zone because it had been there too long. It had been there for about 20 minutes and we were still unloading food. She made sure to inform us that she was the president of the condo association and threatened to have us removed without a refund. Right after, a black pickup pulled up and she immediately walked over to talk to the driver, who never got out. Later that day, another group checked into the condo next to us, but Karen wasn't around for their arrival, so they didn't get the same treatment. We went out for dinner and stayed out late. When we got back, everything was quiet, and we went to bed soon after. The next day, the condo next to us was lively early in the morning. It was a busy weekend, and they had friends over, BBQing, swimming, music, but they weren't bothering us. We kept noticing that black pickup driving by almost hourly. We assumed it belonged to a local and thought nothing of it. That evening, we returned to grab a quick drink before heading out again. The neighboring condo was packed. People everywhere. We locked our doors and took a few pictures and videos in case we needed to prove we weren't involved. As we sat quietly inside watching football, the door slammed open and a man screamed, "What are you people doing?" He barged in with a key in hand. Karen stood watching from outside. We jumped up thinking someone from the party had broken in. The man identified himself as the host, condo owner, and continued yelling. Karen had told him we were throwing the party. She joined in, accusing us of destroying the property. We asked them several times to step outside so we could talk, all while recording, but they refused, shouting, "Get out!" repeatedly. So we called the police. When the owner realized my friend was on the phone with dispatch, he quickly changed his tone and begged us not to follow through. He yelled at Karen to return to her unit. The police arrived, multiple units, since the report was of someone breaking into a rental. They quickly assessed the situation, broke up the actual party next door, and asked us if we could resolve things with the host. At that point, we realized the black pickup belonged to the owner. He admitted Karen had been calling him to complain about us all weekend. She was now on her balcony, still making accusations, clearly under the influence. We told the host we would be leaving and would deal with it through the booking service. He tried to act calm in front of the police, insisting we wouldn't get a refund. We showed him the contract stating the owner can't enter the property except under certain conditions, which didn't apply here. So we packed up and moved to a motel arranged by the booking service. I couldn't let it go. I had to get some payback. What they didn't know is that I used to work for the town, specifically in code enforcement, building safety, fire code, local ordinances. I filed a formal complaint against the condo association, and it became one of the longest reports the town had ever received. An inspector went out and red tagged the property, marking it uninhabitable until repairs were made. The condo association had to spend over $70,000 fixing violations, plus fines and reapplying for rental licensing. It wiped out their funds and each unit had to pay. There was even a rumor that Karen was investigated for embezzlement from the association, though I don't know if anything came of it. Story 8. This happened in the early 1990s. My mom bought a convenience store from a con artist. He convinced her that he had cancer and only months to live, and my mom fell for it, paying way too early and far above the actual value, about double what the shop was worth. The man had falsified the books and showed her fake tax returns, claiming a certain turnover when the shop was running at only about 30% of what he said. She struggled on for 3 or 4 years, but eventually had to give it up and sold it at a significant loss. Last year, she told me that when she sold the shop, a friend of mine got revenge for her. Let's call him Bart, someone I've known since we were both 4 years old and whom my mom also knew well. At the time of the shop situation, I was living overseas. Anyway, once the shop was sold and Mom had moved away, Bart started building a relationship with the con artist, pretending to be friendly in case he ever wanted to sell something. Of course, the man never had cancer. After a few years, the con artist decided to sell and downsize, as his kids had grown up. He gave Bart the contract to sell on his behalf. Bart now had access to the house. During one visit after an open house, he looked around and found a sealed box in the ceiling crawl space. It was very heavy. He carefully cut open the bottom flap so he could reseal it and took a peek inside. He estimated there were over 2 kilograms of gold bars. Over the following week, Bart had lead bars made by a friend who produced fishing sinkers. Then came the switch. He was clever and left the top layer of gold in place. The house sold and the con artist moved out 3 months later. There has never been any mention of the missing gold. Bart sold the gold and gave the proceeds to my mother. He swore her to secrecy, even from me, but she finally told me last year. It was about 35,000 Australian dollars. Still well short of everything she lost, but it made a massive difference to her life at the time. Story 9. Years ago, I rented a townhouse while working on a studio contract. The house was nice, a 2-bedroom I shared with my girlfriend, now my wife. There was a single attached garage, which is important for this story. The next-door neighbor, whom we'll call Chad, was quite the character. He was in his mid-30s, balding, which he tried to hide with a buzz cut, and one of the shortest men I've ever met. He compensated for his height by owning a massive, lifted custom pickup truck that was too tall to fit in his garage. His other prized possession was a heavily modified Honda Civic, which he loved to rev loudly almost daily. Chad had 4 friends he would sit with at the end of his driveway, drinking beer all day and leaving empty cans everywhere. When I moved in during the spring, Chad was initially friendly. He even offered to move his car so the movers could get better access. He had been parking in both driveway spots, even though a visitor lot was just across the street. After the movers left, Chad mentioned that the previous tenants had let him use their garage during winter because his was full of gym equipment and a motorcycle he was building. I told him the landlord hadn't given me the code or key, and I could only open the garage from the inside. Chad then mentioned that his own keys and code no longer worked. Later, I spoke with the landlord and brought up Chad and the garage. He told me not to give Chad access under any circumstances. The previous tenants had been robbed just after Christmas, and the landlord suspected Chad and his friends, even though there was no hard evidence. He had changed the locks and codes when prepping the house for a new tenant. About a month later, another neighbor told me Chad's dad had been a local police officer who died when Chad was a teen. The local police often gave him a pass on noise or nuisance complaints, and he took full advantage. Chad continued to pressure me to give him access to the garage, and when I finally said no, he got extremely angry. So angry his friends had to hold him back from physically confronting me. After that, things escalated. I would find beer cans tossed onto my lawn. He and his friends catcalled my wife when she was alone, blocked my driveway with his truck, blasted loud music at all hours, and made life miserable in general. As winter came, it got worse. He wasn't allowed to park on the street anymore and couldn't use the visitor lot. Some kids ended up vandalizing his Honda's car cover and scratched the paint. He blamed me for not letting him use the garage. After New Year's, I found all of my outdoor Christmas decorations torn down and destroyed on my lawn. That was the last straw. That night marked the beginning of a severe cold snap. Every 30 minutes from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., I sprayed his car with a garden hose, coating it in layer after layer of water. By morning, the car was completely frozen in place, stuck under a thick layer of ice. I hid the hose in my garage. When Chad saw what had happened, he had a complete meltdown. He screamed and yelled so loudly the whole neighborhood woke up. Police and firefighters came, but didn't take any action. Chad's friends tried to use power tools to free the car. One of them even accidentally cut into a tire and part of the fender with a saw. About a week later, the ice finally loosened enough for the car to break free. Chad ended up cracking the windshield trying to remove chunks of ice himself. That spring, my contract ended and I moved away. Finally free of Chad. I decided to share this story because I'm still in touch with my former landlord, and he recently told me that Chad and his friends are now in jail. They were caught robbing a convenience store shortly after the holidays. Story 10. Hi, 41F. I had to do some community service for a misdemeanor charge I was found guilty of, so I went to the senior center in my town. Immediately upon arriving and being introduced to the person in charge, who happened to be the maintenance man, he started hitting on me. We did no work at all. We walked straight through the cafeteria and out the back door, then sat on a bench where he began telling me how awful his life was, how he was in a loveless marriage, and that his wife was disabled. The list went on. I felt bad for him, until he started talking about the other girls who had come through the program. He said they sent him inappropriate photos and that he signed their paperwork to say they had completed their hours. Then he asked if maybe I wanted to do the same. I don't remember what I said, but I left and didn't go back. I tried to pretend it hadn't happened. Then, with only 1 week left in my sentence and just 4 of the required 40 hours completed, I panicked. So I did the only thing I could think of. I texted the maintenance man and told him I wasn't going to send him any photos, but he was going to sign my paperwork, or I would tell his boss in the court everything he had been doing. He signed it. Then I told my probation officer not to assign anyone else to that location and explained why. I had considered calling his boss, but never did. I just wanted to make sure he wouldn't take advantage of any more women in that program. Just to clarify, he is no longer part of the program because I did report him the same day I confronted him. I regret not doing it sooner, and I regret not telling his employer and his wife. The funny twist came later. One day I was at work telling some coworkers about him, and one of them pulled me aside. She started crying and told me that the man was her stepdad. She said she knew he was mistreating her mom, but her mom wouldn't believe her. Maybe now she would. I told her to have her mom call me and I'd share everything, but I never heard from them. As far as I know, they're still together and he still works there, which is unfortunate. Now I'm 50 and technically could go there. It's a great place. The craft room is incredible. They have a choir, lots of exercise equipment, free transportation, and day trips. But I don't want to see him. If I had the nerve, I'd totally go back just to say, "Hey, remember me?" Story 11. In July, my ex-fiancé announced that he wanted a break to focus on himself. I was sad but tried to be understanding, even as he started staying at his friend's house most nights for the next couple of weeks. He left a random mess next to his gym bag, clothes, papers, and miscellaneous items. While cleaning up, I noticed a paper with handwriting on it. It was a love note from a woman. At the end, it said, "Heart, Maddie." So I took a picture of the note and him and posted it in a Facebook group that exposes cheaters. His family, co-workers, friends, and this mystery woman all saw the post and commented on how terrible he was. It turned out she was a co-worker he met at a new job he started a few months earlier. He had never even mentioned me to her. I told the other girl all about him, how he love bombs for the first few months, then completely shuts down, how he rushes intimacy and doesn't care about your needs, how he spends over half his paycheck on his truck and refuses to help with rent because the rest goes to his dirt bike. We both ended up dumping him. She was a younger, popular party girl, and she spread the story to all his co-workers. It even made it back to his old workplace, where he was a supervisor. People at his parents' church told them they were disappointed in him. For a guy who really tried to maintain an image, this hit his ego hard. But honestly, I think he deserved worse. By late October, I had moved out on my own and was minding my own business. He texted me a sad message and mentioned he might file for bankruptcy, trying to get sympathy or someone to talk to. I ignored him and for the first time, slept with someone new. I hate being mean, but I'm good at it when someone hurts me. I recorded a video of myself flushing the engagement ring down the toilet. I sent him the video, told him I was with someone else now, and included a confident selfie. When we broke up, I weighed 160 pounds. I had since dropped to 125, gotten a major pay raise, and felt amazing. I wanted him to see the person he lost. He was clearly upset, but I feel like he brought all of it on himself. As far as I know, he's miserable now, still binge-watching 7 episodes a night of the same show. Apparently, he watched all of NCIS from start to finish after I moved out. I feel like I got my revenge. I just hope he never hurts anyone else the way he hurt me. I was so trusting, and the betrayal was painful. But now I've moved on, and I've never felt more empowered. Story 12. I made my ex believe that I was dead. 6 months ago, he left me for his ex, the same woman he had assured me was abusive and that he had no feelings for. There was no apology, no explanation. He just blocked me on everything, and I never heard from him again. He lied about everything, and I only found out the truth by chance. It was heartbreaking. I almost ended my life the day I discovered it. Every day since, I wanted him to know how much pain his actions had caused. I figured if he knew, maybe he wouldn't treat people that way. But instead of harassing or begging him, I left it alone for 6 months. I fell into a deep depression and tried to move on with my life as best as I could. But I decided that if he ever reached out again, I would tell him I had passed away, make him regret treating me so badly and abandoning me for all that time. Well, yesterday, I received a long apology text from him about how he mistreated me. I saw I had been unblocked everywhere. I replied, pretending to be my sister, and told him our family had been trying to get in touch with him. I told him that I had passed away and had left a note mentioning him, listing a few things I wanted to leave for him. He seemed shocked. I offered to mail the items to him if he wanted them. He gave me his address, and I'm sending them tomorrow. He will never find out the truth. We have 0 mutual friends. I don't use social media, and our city is large enough that we will never run into each other. I hope he feels awful. I hope this experience teaches him never to treat anyone as disposable again. He treated me like I was already dead to him, so I simply made it a reality. Story 13. I lived in a Texas mobile home park years ago when I was younger and woke up one day to find my car missing. When I called the police to report it stolen, I was informed that it had been towed. I spent the entire day on the phone arguing with the park office and the towing company, and I had to call in and miss work. Luckily, I had time off accrued, so I still got paid. They had towed my vehicle from my own driveway in the middle of the night. It wasn't on the street, it wasn't broken down, and it wasn't an eyesore. There was no reason for it to be towed. I couldn't imagine what justification they had. The tow company claimed I was partially parked on the grass, which wasn't allowed. Maybe half of my passenger side tires were on the grass, but honestly, I don't even think it was that much. The only reason the tires even touched the grass was because the pavement on the driveway was crumbling and deteriorating around the edges from age and the extreme Texas heat. So, if you had two cars parked side by side like my spouse and I did, one of them had to be slightly on the grass due to the shrinking usable surface. The driveway had been neglected for so long that grass had started growing through the cracks and was overtaking the edges. After getting nothing but apathy and attitude from both the park office and the towing company, I called city code enforcement. They came out that very day to inspect my driveway. The inspector found that the driveway didn't meet code. It was supposed to be a certain width and depth, and it had shrunk well below that due to years of neglect. The inspector then visited the park office to inform them of the violation. Not only that, but the inspector told them they would be inspecting the entire park, all 188 lots, within the next few weeks. Every driveway not up to code would have to be repaired within 30 days, or the park would face continuous penalties per violation until everything was corrected. This meant they were suddenly facing thousands of dollars in repair work, plus the threat of additional thousands in fines if they failed to comply in time. I got my car back from the tow company by the end of the day, without having to pay any fees. When I arrived, they gave me a cold attitude and tried to rush me out. But I made a point of taking a dozen photos of my car from every angle in case there was any damage from the towing or storage process. That moment of justice felt amazing. For context, the park was a great independent place when we first moved in, but it became a greedy corporate mess after a national company bought it. They raised lot rent by 4% every year, which I believe was the legal maximum. They also stopped renting homes everyone had to buy if they wanted to stay after their lease ended. Of course, they raised the prices well above the previous listing values. For example, our home went up by $5,000 compared to the price we could have paid when we first moved in. We decided to do a private lease-to-own deal with another couple who had poor credit, just for what we still owed on the home. We got out within a year after the towing incident. Thankfully, the couple turned out to be great. They paid on time and, after a few years, improved their credit enough to refinance under their own names. So ultimately, everything worked out in our favor. We got away from a cold, ruthless corporate machine, and I got my sweet revenge. Story 14. Revenge on my former neighbor who vandalized my vehicle. This happened about 15 years ago. My wife and I purchased a home deep in the country in an effort to simplify our lives. We quickly met our neighbors and everything seemed good. A year or so after we moved in, my wife became pregnant with our first child. I was traveling for work at the time, and while I was out of town, she was trying to take a relaxing soak in the tub. Her feet were swollen due to the pregnancy. As she tried to relax, the neighbor's dog barked nonstop. It was a large breed with a deep, loud bark. This went on for at least 30 minutes. My wife, frustrated and hormonal, got out of the tub, threw on her bathrobe, and yelled out the door at the neighbors to shut their dog up. That's when things got interesting. The neighbor went full-on petty mode. They renamed their Wi-Fi network to I Love Barking Dogs. We started finding random things vandalized on our property. One day I came home to see my wife picking items up off our driveway. Turns out this neighbor had thrown some makeshift nail devices into the drive, clearly trying to puncture the tires of my truck. Then came the truly dangerous part. I left for work the next morning, and by the time I reached the interstate, my brakes felt soft. I pulled into a truck stop to check things out. Someone had loosened the petcock valve on my front right brake caliper, causing most of the brake fluid to leak out. That man had literally tried to harm me. I was furious. But instead of confronting him directly, I opted for something more calculated. I work in IT, so tech is my area. I pulled out an old laptop and installed a security testing operating system. I hacked into their Wi-Fi. Then I printed things on their wireless printer, starting with what looked like an email from another woman to the husband. I also printed some explicit photos. I would have loved to see their reactions. But I wasn't done. I signed his wife up for a prison pen pal site, pretending to be her. I wrote a letter as if it were from her, including enough personal details about their lives to make it convincing. How long they'd been married, the husband's job, the number of kids and pets, etc. I can only imagine the conversation they had after that letter arrived. I've never told this story before, but I hope it brings someone else even a little satisfaction. I know it brought me a lot. Story 15. I-18M had an ex, 18F. I hadn't spoken to in months. Fast forward to last week. I was talking with a group of friends and her name came up in conversation from a friend of a friend. This person thought we were still together. When I explained we had broken up, we kept chatting, and it got me wondering how she'd been doing. Now she ghosted me in a really painful way, but because I tend to be forgiving, I tried not to dwell on it. Still, after the conversation, I decided to reach out, just to check in. Since she had me blocked, I messaged her friend to ask how she was doing. The friend seemed cool with it, and everything seemed fine. Until my ex messaged my friend, pretending to be her own sister, and told him that she had died. What she didn't know is that I remembered her pulling this exact stunt with her previous ex before me. So here comes the revenge. My friends and I made the 51-minute drive to her house to pay our respects. We stopped at a gas station and bought every bouquet of flowers they had, loaded them into a basket, and included a card marked "Our deepest condolences." The card was filled with glitter, some of the finest sparkly stuff we could find at the dollar store. When we got to her house, I told my friends to stay back while I walked up to the porch. I knocked on the door, set the flowers down, and began walking away. Her dad answered the door and asked, "Can I help you?" I replied, "I'm sorry for your loss." Her name meant so much to me. It's sad to see her gone. In confusion, her dad responded, "Her name isn't dead." As my friends and I walked away, my ex and her friends pulled up in her car. She looked at us and asked, "What are you doing here?" I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "I thought you died." Her dad was furious. He ended up grounding her until summer and, in a surprising twist, gave each of us $20 for gas and the trouble we went through. It was the most satisfying closure I've ever had. Story 16. A few years ago, my wife started her master's, and I began my PhD in a new city, in a country with strong tenant rights. We could only afford an apartment in a pretty shady neighborhood. For the most part, it was fine, and we got along with the neighbors except for one. Next door was a roommate set up with 3 guys. One of them moved out shortly after we arrived. At first, we didn't think much of it, but soon one of the remaining roommates confided that the other was trying to kick him out to get the place to himself. Things got bad between them, arguments, frequent police calls, but it didn't involve us. Eventually, the roommate moved out, and the one who stayed behind went completely unhinged. He partied until 6 a.m. almost every weekend, triggering more police calls. He was searched for drugs at least twice, threw bottles off his balcony, and even attacked a neighbor. At first, he was polite to us. When we asked him to turn the music down, he usually did. He even invited us over sometimes. One time he showed us his drug stash and tried to throw another bottle off the balcony. We stopped him. Everything changed when he lost his job. The loud music became constant, and he stopped responding to complaints. This became a huge problem for my wife, who was studying at home and couldn't focus. The landlady, an older, overwhelmed woman, was already planning his eviction, and our complaints were just the final straw. But she took her time. During one of our visits to his apartment, I noticed his big Sonos speakers, controlled via Wi-Fi. That gave me an idea. I used an old university laptop, installed Linux and a Wi-Fi penetration testing package, and we had control. Anytime the music got too loud, we shut down his entire network. One command, instant silence, sometimes followed by frustrated screams. We didn't do it to be petty. We let him play music. But when it became unbearable, we pulled the plug. The feeling of being able to defend ourselves was empowering. One weekday, his music was blasting again. My wife shut down his network. This time he lost it. He started screaming, slamming doors, smashing walls. We called the police, who initially brushed it off as a simple disturbance, until they heard his name. "Oh, him," they said. Minutes later, multiple officers showed up. He didn't cooperate and was sent to a psychiatric ward for a few days. When he came back, he apologized with a terrifying, leather-clad, 6.5-foot-tall, Italian-looking probation officer standing behind him. He moved out a few weeks later. It stayed quiet until he left. He never found out that we messed with his network and indirectly caused the final police visit. But honestly, he had it coming. Story 17. My ex-sister-in-law was the type to put on airs and constantly tell everyone how well off she and her husband were. Christmas was always a nightmare because she'd hand out a list of expensive gifts she expected and wouldn't accept anything that wasn't on it. This was not a two-way street. The year that sticks in my mind is when she insisted I buy her a really expensive scarf from a local boutique. We couldn't afford it, so I spent 3 months searching for one made from the same material and with a pattern so similar you couldn't tell the difference, unless you were her. She opened her gift, immediately looked at the label, huffed, rolled her eyes, and tossed it on the floor next to her slippers. She didn't even say thank you. The next day, she posted on social media about the pile of crap she got for Christmas, including a photo of the scarf. Most of her friends sympathized and mocked me, asking who I thought I was buying her something so cheap. A few people commented that the scarf looked beautiful and nearly identical to the expensive one, but she quickly dismissed them for being cheap too. Cue petty revenge. I waited 12 months, ignored her gift list entirely, and planned her gift myself. Christmas Day came, and once again, we all had to spend over 2 hours driving to her house because she wouldn't visit anyone else's. I handed her a small envelope. She looked excited. Later, I learned she had asked for gift vouchers to an extremely expensive jewelry shop. She opened the envelope to find an Oxfam voucher for £50 to provide manure for crops in a developing village. The note read, "At least this year, when you tell everyone you got a pile of crap for Christmas, you won't be wrong." The room erupted in laughter. She had no idea that I knew about her social media rant from the year before. The look on her face was worth all the nastiness she ever threw my way, until I finally divorced her brother, who left me 3 weeks after I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Just for context, the year of the scarf, we received school photos of her kids in cheap frames. The year of the crap, we got tea towels. Story 18. For context, I, 34F, have a son in high school who plays soccer. This year he is a senior, so for the last 4 years, we've been getting toilet paper just about every weekend during October, sometimes even twice in a weekend. I've mostly laughed it off, but honestly, I was just over it. I didn't believe in revenge or vandalism, and to be fair, these kids never crossed that line either. But I was sick of picking up the mess. It's obvious we were considered an easy target, thanks to the 2 big trees in our front yard. I thought about it for a while and finally came up with a harmless but satisfying plan. We have 2 large dogs. They're sweet as can be, but big boys. They usually forget their job of alerting me to intruders. Still, I found a way to include them. For the past 2 weeks, I've only taken them to do their business in the front yard. It's gross, I know. But tonight, when we got TP'd again, they definitely stepped in a few piles. And now some poor mom's car is going to smell terrible. I feel better. Story 19. A long time ago, we were in Hollywood on a Friday night just walking around. A car drove by, and my friend got hit in the thigh with an egg. There were 3 of us. We had just left his place, so he went back inside to change. He came back out, and we resumed our night. We hadn't gotten far when we saw the same car again. Eggs flew out of both sides. That's when we decided to change our plans. We went to the market and bought a dozen eggs. Then my friend said, "Let's get some liver too." So now we're walking with a paper bag filled with eggs and raw liver. Soon after, we spotted the Firebird again. This time, they were turning onto Highland from Franklin and got caught in that notorious traffic at the light on Hollywood Boulevard. I was holding the bag while my friends quickly opened the 2-pint containers of liver and dumped it inside, gently placing the eggs on top. Meanwhile, the traffic light at Hollywood had just turned red, and the Firebird, a shiny, newish car, was second or third in line. I started running. They were about 100 yards away. As I got closer, I saw the walk signs flashing. The light was about to turn green. All the windows were down. Inside were 5 teenagers, 3 girls and 2 boys, with eggs in their hands laughing. I reached the car just in time. I stuck my head through the window and yelled, "You like eggs?" Then I swung the bag from right to left, still holding on to it so that all the contents, eggs and liver, sprayed across the inside of the car. The driver jumped out and tried to run around the back to catch me, but he forgot to put the car in park. The Firebird started rolling and bumped into the car in front. Not a huge impact, but enough. The light turned green, cars started honking, and we disappeared into the night. Story 20. Long story short, he completely ruined my life for over 3 years. He had a partner the whole time. I found out about her after the first 4 or 5 months. They weren't married, just living together. She had 2 kids with her ex-husband. My relationship with him was chaotic from the start. When I found out about her, I ended things. But he started sending gifts to my workplace, and eventually I forgave him and took him back. He made plenty of promises about leaving her, but he never did. After countless lies, I finally walked away. We all share a specific social circle, and one day I met the woman's ex-husband at a club meeting. I acted like I didn't know who he was, but I absolutely did. He asked for my number, and I gave it to him. We started talking, and after a couple of months, we began dating. It's been a year now, and we're genuinely happy. My ex-situationship can't say a word. No one ever knew about us, so he just has to take it in silence. At first, I did it out of spite, but then I realized this man is absolutely fantastic. So, a win is a win. Story 21. My sister's husband cheated on her with one of her friends. Then he managed to screw her out of their house and most of the money in the divorce. She was devastated, but eventually she moved on. Meanwhile, her ex married the mistress, who, by the way, he had gotten pregnant while still married to my sister. A few years later, my sister was cleaning up her email accounts when she realized she still had access to her ex's email on her computer. Out of curiosity, she logged in and saw an automated email from Ashley Madison saying, "Your account is now active. Remember that website? It's where married people go to meet other married people to cheat." She went on Ashley Madison, and sure enough, he had a profile. Lesson: always change your passwords after a divorce. When she told me, I came up with the most devious idea. I created a fake Ashley Madison account, posing as a very attractive married woman in his city looking for an affair. I sent him a wink. He responded immediately, and we started chatting. Soon we were making plans to meet. He got very explicit with what he wanted to do, even complaining about how his wife never wanted to be intimate. He shared personal details about his life, job, and made negative comments about his wife. Stuff only he could have known. I strung him along for weeks. We exchanged well over 100 messages. Eventually, we made plans to meet at a motel near his house. Of course, no one showed up. But later that night, I sent him a message thanking him for the amazing time. Then I printed the entire conversation and mailed it to his wife's office. She bought every word. He was furious and sent angry messages to the fake account. I convinced him that my husband had discovered the messages and mailed them to his wife. He believed me. She left him. She got the house, full custody of their child, and alimony. This all happened years ago. He's never remarried, still lives in a rundown apartment, and has no idea who did this to him. Story 22. I, 26F, met my ex, 24M, at work. We were together for a year and a half and eventually moved in together. We still work for the same corporate company, but in different departments. After the breakup, we avoided each other and tried to keep things civil since a few coworkers knew we had been together. He kept the apartment, even though I suggested we get a subleaser. He said he was working late for a promotion and didn't want the hassle of moving. After going back and forth, we agreed that I would continue paying a quarter of the rent until the lease ended. 1 month after I moved out, he moved in his high school ex-girlfriend from Canada. I didn't know how long she was staying, and I was trying to move on, so I said nothing. 2 months later, someone sent me a photo. They were engaged. I figured the timeline was rushed because she needed documentation to stay and work in the country. I was hurt, and I canceled the future rent checks. Neither of us reached out. The following month, March, they got married in a small ceremony. It happened on my birthday weekend. My birthday was on a Monday. They got married the day before. At this point, we'd been broken up for 5 months. I felt like myself again, but that moment still stung. Ultimately, I didn't react. Yesterday, he started texting me about the rent money since I had stopped the checks 2 months ago. I left him on red. What ticked me off the most was that he really expected me to financially support him and his wife in the apartment we had picked out together. When we were dating, he confided in me that he never finished college. He had dropped out, not for financial reasons, but because he wanted to explore the world. He even made a fake degree certificate to land the job he has now. Now he's reaching out, asking me to help pay rent for him and his wife. Some of my friends are torn on what I should do. We work for a Fortune 500 company with a prestigious reputation. Some say I'd be ruining his future. Others say he deserves it, and a few think it could make me look like a bitter ex. He's a fraud. I'm just looking for guidance. I'm only considering doing something about it next month when the lease is up, if he keeps asking me for the money. Story 23. Originally shared in Petty Revenge, but I was told I should post it here too. In 2003, the company I was working for shut down, so I began looking for new employment. I was a machinist by trade with a strong reputation, so it took me less than a day to land a new job. We'll call the new place Spiral due to the specialized tools they made. I started as one of the operators. The company was owner-operated, meaning the owner was there every day. There was also a floor supervisor who was actually a decent guy. After I had been there about a year, the owner and the supervisor had a falling out and the supervisor left. For whatever reason, the owner, let's call him Dick, told me I was now in charge. A bit of background on Dick. He was in his 60s and had started the company out of his garage. He eventually bought a massive piece of land and turned it into an industrial park, all in his 20s. By now, he was one of the wealthiest men in the state, and also one of the most unpleasant. He treated nearly every employee terribly, except for me and one other guy. If we dared to talk to each other during work hours, he would scream at us. My promotion financially trapped me. Dick had no problem chatting with me, and he was the bragging type, rich, arrogant, and paying his workers the bare minimum. In our conversations, he disclosed some shady practices. The industrial park was owned by one entity he created, while Spiral was owned by another. He ensured that the industrial park charged Spiral just enough in rent to make it appear the business was barely staying afloat. He also bragged about burying industrial waste on his personal property to avoid disposal costs. Over the next decade, he made my life miserable. He kept my pay just high enough that I couldn't afford to leave, while constantly mistreating me and my team. I experienced a 95% employee turnover rate. I'm not exaggerating. Eventually, even the temp agency stopped sending us people. I carefully maneuvered my way into convincing Dick to let me use the title plant manager. This was huge for me, as I didn't have a college degree. But now I had the title and the experience. After 6 months of searching, I found a new job with significantly better pay and benefits. Spiral had none. I knew everyone who gave notice got shown the door immediately. The new company insisted I give 2 weeks' notice. I agreed, but didn't actually do it. On my last day, I sat at my desk and sent emails to the head of OSHA in the state's EPA office. 2 people I had gotten to know well. I shared all the violations Dick had bragged about. I also contacted the state's attorney regarding the cooked books. I left my keys on the desk with a note that simply said, "I quit." I never found out if anything came of the state attorney's investigation, but the contact at OSHA informed me that the company received $150,000 in fines for willful violations. The EPA dug up half of Dick's property before he admitted where the waste was buried. Last I heard, he ended up in jail. Story 24. This has been an ongoing dispute since September, when management changed and I finally got some revenge and justice with the help of the labor board. I work alone at the front desk, so I don't often get breaks that are completely free from work, which I'm perfectly fine with. My issue is that they don't pay me for the time I'm working through those breaks. In March, I went to speak with the financial controller about it. Unfortunately, I didn't have the foresight to secretly record that conversation, but during it, he said, "The law does not apply here," when I tried to explain why what they were doing was illegal. I even gave him a printed copy of the employment law. 2 weeks later, I went back to speak with him again. This time, I was secretly recording, legal in my province due to one-party consent and the conversation taking place in an area with no expectation of privacy. I told him the same issue, showed him a picture I had taken of my timesheet before turning it in, and reminded him that I wasn't even asking for proper breaks. I just said, "If you're not going to cover me, pay me for the time I'm working." That's when he completely lost it. He told me they could fire me if they wanted because I left the property to grab food while on a covered break and didn't ask for permission. He also admitted to modifying my timesheet, which is even more illegal than the wage theft. He even acknowledged that he knew they were supposed to pay me, but said, "There ain't shit you can do about it, so get the fun out." Today, the verdict came in from the labor board, and I won. The hotel was ordered to pay me 3 times all stolen wages for the inconvenience, plus legal fees. And I wasn't the only one who got a payout. When the board investigated, they looked into everyone and everything. All 8 of my co-workers were awarded 3 times their stolen wages as well, and the hotel presumably got slammed with a massive fine. Just goes to show, even if you're the boss and think you're untouchable, mess with the wrong person and you'll get hit back 10 times harder.